discuss is the Vice President for Federal Affairs at the National Taxpayers Union, Tommy Aiello. Tommy, nice to see you on a Thursday. You also said that New York gets an extra vote from you for the worst mayor in America. So I'll put that into the final count. And talk about mismanagement. New York's right there in the list. And so is Chicago, and so is Seattle, and so are all these other big blue cities. Look, these places are in financial wreckage. I mean, look at California. What a disaster. State level, county level, municipal level. It doesn't matter where you look. These people are all broke, and they keep saying, well, we need to spend more money. We need to tax more. They just don't learn, do they?
Well, they've been spending like drunken sailors. Over the past 15 years, they've racked up a total debt of $6 trillion. These are places like New York, California, Illinois. At the same time, they're bleeding taxpayers. Illinois loses a taxpayer every 10 minutes. The state of California loses a taxpayer every 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Eventually, the bill is going to come due because these states are going broke. They're running out of taxpayers. They're running out of people to tax. When that happens, they're going to need a bailout to fund their pension system and to fund all the bills that they haven't paid. It's wrong, and we need to make sure that that never happens.
You know, I want to circle that, Tommy, because what you just said there is incredibly important, a point that you made. Unfunded liabilities, because that's not just at the municipal level and the state level, it's at the federal level, too. If you actually look at the debt of America, and people say, well, it's $40 trillion, it's actually 4 times that high. Because of unfunded liabilities like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the list goes on and on. The same is true at the local and state level across this country. The amount of debt that we have in America collectively is staggering, isn't it?
It's a real problem, and I think we're starting to see that in the bond market itself. Interest rates continue to climb, which makes our debt servicing costs that much more expensive. But it's so much worse even at the state and local level. That's why there's this new bill put forward by Senator Todd Young of Indiana and Tom Cotton of Arkansas, 2 really strong conservatives. What they want to do is say, if the state and local governments, if they're going bankrupt, let them figure it out themselves. We shouldn't have taxpayers from greatly run states like Indiana, Arkansas, Texas, and Florida foot the bill for these mistakes that these states have made. These are really incredibly run states, and unfortunately, their taxpayers could be on the hook for the bailout when the bill comes due, and it's going to come due.
Well, and how is that going to look? About like a scene out of Escape from New York? I mean, honestly, how is that going to look? Because if they have to rely on themselves and there's not the federal money being plucked out of Indiana or wherever else, it's an impossible debt to pay. They will go into default. Teachers will be laid off. Hospitals will close. It'll be complete and utter chaos, won't it?
It will. And already the bond markets are signaling that's going to be the case. A place like Detroit and Chicago, they have some of the worst bond ratings out of any city in the country. That means the market doesn't believe that they're going to be able to pay their bills in the near future. Same thing in a place like New York City, where I live, where our mayor had a $12 billion deficit. He relied on a bailout from the state of New York to cover the bills. Meanwhile, the state of New York is going broke itself. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and they're expecting President Trump and Washington, D.C. to come to their rescue. If that happens, it's going to be a disaster for federal taxpayers. Again, if people in New York, they want to dabble with socialism and have all these crazy policies, they need to pay for it themselves. And if people don't want to live here because of those crazy policies, they're going to go to other states, which is already what's happening. We need to make sure that there's safeguards in place to protect taxpayers all over the country and put these safeguards in place to make sure that they're not footing the bill for a future bailout. The bill is going to come due, and I don't want taxpayers in other states to pay for the mistakes of New York, Illinois, and California.
I mean, if Albany sends New York City $12 billion, they've collected it from the people living on the shores of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. They're collecting it from the Five Finger Lakes region. They're collecting it from all over the state to send it to New York City, who, by the way, doesn't change their spending. In fact, under this mayor, he wants to spend more. And, of course, take away private property rights from landlords if he deems them as to not being what he likes. I mean, when you talk about socialism, this guy is a case study in what to do wrong or what not to do ever, might be a better way to put it. I mean, look, they don't stop spending. They just take another bailout and another bailout. And the little people get hurt, don't they?
You know, as Margaret Thatcher said, the problem with socialism is you run out of other people's money. This great bill by Senator Young and Senator Cotton, we need to make sure we pass this bill, put it on the Senate floor for a vote and get it to President Trump's desk so we can take these bailouts off the table once and for good, and also rein in the Federal Reserve so that way they don't have a lender of last resort situation that goes around the Congress for funds to bail out these states. It's incredibly important. It'll safeguard taxpayer dollars, and it'll actually encourage these states to make incredible pro-free market, pro-taxpayer reforms that they desperately need.
Yeah. The legislation makes sense. I wonder how Lisa Murkowski will figure out how to not vote for it. But that's just my thought. Tommy, thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate seeing you on a Thursday. Thank you, sir. Coming up after the break, I'll discuss the big win